Suzanne McGill started a school, which we're going to learn about today, in 2008. And I had the pleasure of going to one of their events a couple months ago where some students came from Rwanda to talk about the impact that this school has had on their lives. And we may actually hear from some of those students today by video, or Soozi will certainly tell us about them. But it's an amazing story, and it's really changing lives throughout Africa. And please join me in welcoming Soozi.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and just super honored. Thank you, Spencer, for inviting me, and for all of you for being here. I'm really excited to tell you about the project. I do have to tell you because this is hilarious. I told my kids earlier this week that I was being invited here, and I'm a little nervous. Hopefully you can't hear my heart beating in my mic. That I was invited here, and I told them, yeah, you know, they have this speaker series, and they have, from your first email, yeah, they have former, you know, senators and governors, the CIA head or something, and last month was former President Vicente Fox, and my daughter looked at me and she's like, but you're not anybody. And then my son followed that up with, did somebody cancel? And I was like, okay, so my children keep me very humble about what I do. Clearly they don't think I do anything. But I am super excited to tell you about the school and about our sort of journey as we started the school, really. A lot of people ask, I started this with a friend of mine that I've known since high school, Shel Foster, and people ask us a lot of times, you know, how did you guys get started? I mean, sort of two moms from Seattle, how did you end up doing this? And we really, I think the foundation of it and the sort of kernel of it was that we just really feel like our own kids and all of us here, right, are so lucky just by what some people call the, you know, uterine lottery, that where we're born and the opportunities that we end up with, and that education really is the foundation for everything. That, you know, anything in any developing country, there's so many good things going on, of course, in development, but to have a country really be able to have build their own capacity and build their own development, that you have to have an educated population, and so you've got to support these kids and young adults in becoming educated. So that was really sort of the beginning seed of it in conversations that we were having, and we kind of thought, gosh, you know, maybe we could do something. And to be totally honest, when we started, we thought maybe we could take some computers or some soccer balls or something. That was, you know, the scale that we were thinking. And as all sort of cool, amazing things happen, it's grown and sort of snowballed from there into what I'll talk about today and tell you about, and certainly become better and richer for all of that. But that was sort of how we started. So be careful if you have a small idea how things end up. So how we ended up in Rwanda, we first started looking, we were drawn to sub-Saharan Africa, and for lots of different reasons, opportunity and personal reasons we were drawn there. Sort of looking at the landscape of where we felt like we could make an impact in sub-Saharan Africa. And then really entirely separately, we'd been looking at South Africa and looking around. I ended up in Rwanda with my parents and my two older kids at the time. Cooper and Chloe were 11 and 8. And we went to go see Rwanda because my dad worked for Costco, and Costco's buying about 30% of Rwanda's coffee exports. So we went to go and see the coffee farms. They wanted him to come and see what they're doing to improve the quality of the coffee and using the coffee as a means, the coffee cooperatives as a means of reconciliation. And so we went for that, and I came back so energized. To be totally honest, what I knew of Rwanda, I'm embarrassed to say, but was really the genocide. I'd seen Hotel Rwanda, and that was my point of reference for the country. And then I got there, and of course now it's even been some years later. It will be the 20th anniversary of the genocide that happened there in 1994 in April. And so, you know, a fair amount of time, yes, but in the whole scheme of things, not very long at all, right, in history, for this country that was completely decimated, nearly a million people killed in 100 days, and everything destroyed. And what they've built up now today is pretty remarkable. And as you can see, I mean, there's huge challenges. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. It's landlocked, doesn't have a lot of natural resources. But they have this government that's committed to trying to rebuild their country and define themselves as something other than the genocide, and trying really to become less and less dependent on foreign aid they've been trying to encourage people to come, saying, please come invest in our country, come and invest in our infrastructure and help stand beside us to build our country. And it's working because people are coming, and it's being rated consistently by the World Bank and World Economic Forum as one of the top places to invest, one of the top reformers for business, for doing business, not only just in sub-Saharan Africa, but actually in the world. So it's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do. So Shal and I, as we started to look at this and thinking about where we could maybe add value, what really came to the forefront from people that we talked to in Rwanda and other experts and people that we were lucky enough to speak with was, first of all, focus on secondary school is kind of the first message that we got, and please focus on girls. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware now, 6 years ago when we started looking, a lot of it was new to us, but I mean, there's just mountains and mountains of evidence out there now about what happens when you invest in girls and educate girls in the developing world, and what they go on to do. For your return on investment is just amazing. For nearly when you look at nearly every challenge that we have globally, if it's AIDS, maternal and infant mortality, conflict, everything really, if you look at it, educating a girl is probably the most powerful tool we have to make an impact in those areas. And you can see, because she uses her earning power, she increases her earning power by every year she goes to secondary school, and then she uses it differently. She allocates her money differently. Sorry, guys, but but it's true. When a woman in the developing world has access or control of the purse strings, as they say, of some of that income that they have, she chooses to use that money to educate her kids, feed her kids, and health care for her kids. All kinds of things, obviously, that have a huge positive impact. They have less children when they have an education, which in a country like Rwanda is about the size of Vermont and has about 11 million people. It's the most densely populated country in Africa, so you can imagine that that's a huge strain on the country, and they're trying very hard to encourage people to decrease the size of their families for the country to be able to survive. So all these things are really positive. The other thing I should say about this that I think is always important to note, I mean, I think for Shal and I, we became passionate about this for several different reasons, one of which is just the social justice issue, right? You've got 66 million girls worldwide that are out of school that should be in school for all kinds of different reasons. Dropping out because of safety. Their parents are afraid they won't be safe going to school. A lot of times during their adolescence, at that point, they drop out because they can't provide supplies for themselves, so they might miss a week, a month of school, and they fall further and further behind until they drop out. All kinds of reasons why we lose these adolescent girls. So, I mean, it's a social justice issue, but if you look economically at these countries, I saw a statistic that in sub-Saharan Africa, a girl that finishes secondary school increases her annual income by about $2,000. And if you look how that plays out in Rwanda, there's about 750,000 girls out of school. So if you multiply that out, that's like $1.5 billion to their national economy that would be added each year just by educating these girls and getting them involved in the economy. So it's social justice, but it's also really an economic impact that this will have. So the interesting thing about Rwanda that some of you may know, which is unusual, it's sub-Saharan Africa in general has been a pretty patriarchal society, and certainly in Rwanda that was the case as well. But post-genocide, the country ended up with about 70% women in the country. So all of a sudden you had this interesting, unique situation where women had to step into roles of leadership. And they really were pivotal players in the restructuring of the country and the reconciliation that went on in the country because the men had either been killed or they were perpetrators that fled the country when the genocide was ended. So they really were forced into this position. And then since then, the leadership in Rwanda actually changed in their new constitution. The parliament has to be 1/3 women, which is incredible. And when I first started working there, they were at about 56% women in the parliament, which was the world's first female majority parliament. And when I was just there in October, they had their recent parliamentary elections, and it's now 64% women in the parliament, which is just unbelievable. And not to compare, it's like comparing your children, but I mean, we got all excited when we got to 20%, I think, in our Congress at the last election of women, which is, I think, maybe not something to be as proud about when you hear some of these numbers. So at the highest level, you have women in these leadership roles, which is really amazing. There's still an education and a disconnect at the rural level of what happens. There's still the situation that if a family has enough money to send one of their children, that they'll send their boy, because that's just traditionally been what they do and what they think is their best investment. So it's trying to get people to understand, and the government is doing this as well, to understand, educate your girls. I've heard President Kagame say on more than one occasion that if over 50% of our population is not involved in the development of our country, we'll never reach our development goals. And so that's something that they're really, really trying to encourage. So as we sort of pull together all of the things that we learned from everyone that we talked to, from the Minister of Education to the head of the different churches working there, different NGOs working in Rwanda, we tried to pull together what we thought would be an interesting model for education. And as I mentioned, because so few girls go on to secondary school, in the last slide, I think it's about 15% right now that go on to secondary school, because it's so low, and it's a lot of the problem is just facilities. There's nowhere to go. And so when we didn't initially start out thinking we're going to build a school, it became clear pretty quickly that, okay, we actually have to create a school. There's got to be some place for these girls to go. And then, as I'll talk about later, it needed to be, when we looked at all the challenges, why are these girls dropping out of school? Again, not just in Rwanda, but in the developing world. It needed to be a boarding school, because that was the only way to have them there, keep them safe, give them nutritious meals, health care, everything, a typical girl's day if you're in a normal school, is you would go to school, then you would walk home in probably a great distance, and then you would spend probably 4 to 5 hours doing chores, collecting wood, getting water, what have you, and then by that time it's getting dark, so there's no light then to study by. So it's really just a vicious cycle for them. So this way they're here, they can study, their whole focus to have the most opportunity possible is on their studies and being healthy and keeping them safe, really. So that's sort of how that developed. Then we looked at, which is probably completely evident and doesn't need to be stated, but we had never done anything like this before, so we had no idea what we were doing. And certainly lots of things to learn in every possible area of what this ended up to be. So we tried to reach out to all the different resources that we had in our own community, and of course in the local community there and the government there, to say, okay, here's what we want to do, and we do want to stand with you and help build this, but we need help to do this because we don't know how to do this. So we partnered, as you can see, with University of Washington. I'll tell you about our partnership with Washington State University in a few minutes, with their agriculture program, which has been a wonderful partnership. But we had Mulvaney G2, that's a local architecture firm in town here. They did all the plans pro bono for us, which I'm sure when they agreed to it initially, they maybe had no idea, frankly, what they were signing on for in the hundreds of hours. But it was such an incredible gift to us to work with them, with the local architect there on the ground, to make sure it really was culturally relevant and made sense. And we have a partnership with the Peace Corps. So we've really tried to reach out everywhere we can to bring in people to help to make this project the best that it can be, and hopefully a model to have other people be able to pull at least pieces of or replicate themselves. So in the end, what we built is a secondary school for girls, a boarding school, as I said. It's basically 10th through 12th grade, so upper secondary school. And its focus is on STEM subjects, because that's part of, which you'll see in the film that I'll show in a minute, but that's definitely a focus of the national agenda in Rwanda, is to focus on STEM. They, as I mentioned earlier, they don't have the natural resources that a lot of other countries around them have. So they kind of imagine themselves as the Singapore of Africa, that they could be this kind of knowledge-based economy and hub, that if you were going to go to Central Africa or East Africa and start a business, do something, that you would say, gosh, this is where I want to be. It has one of the lowest corruption rates on the continent, transparency in the government, the ease of starting something is there. So, so that's exciting. We really have focused on, as time has evolved, it's a university prep school, which I would say initially we thought, oh gosh, again, starting with computers and soccer balls, it will be great if we have a school that these girls have an opportunity to go to high school, and that was the beginning. But at the point that we opened the school opened in January of 2011 after a couple years of planning and building. And we really got feedback from people, our colleagues in Rwanda and partners in Rwanda that said, these girls must go on to higher learning. They have to, if they have this opportunity, which is going to be so superior to most anything else in this country, this has to be their path, and we have to try to make this a possibility, either in Rwanda or other places, for them to be able to go on. And they should, because they're amazing and brilliant, again, as you'll see in the film. So that's our focus. We have a combination of African teachers, either from Uganda or Rwanda, and some US teachers. And our founding head was actually a man from the US, from San Francisco, who went over for the first 3 years. He just finished his 3 years with the first graduating class in October, to really set the foundation of the school. And then now we have a Rwandan head that's taking over, because our goal is always to be ultimately a Rwandan school that transitions to them once it's set up and going. So, and we do have great support from the Rwandan government. We follow the national curriculum in Rwanda, because they do a national exam when they finish school. And if you guys know anything about education, well, I'm sure lots of places in the world, but certainly in Rwanda, and I think a lot of places in Africa, everything sort of rides on the national exam, for better or worse. Sometimes that's not always a good thing. But because of that, we want to prepare them as best we can for the national exam. So that means we need to adhere to their national curriculum. But we try to do that, bringing sort of the best of both what Rwanda's doing and what we can bring from Western style, more student-centered learning, problem solving, critical thinking type things, so that they leave not just able to spew back out what they've learned, but actually how they got there. So it's a challenge. I started to say, sorry, I got off track, with the language. So up until about 4 years ago, Rwanda was a Francophone country, and it had been a Belgian colony. So Kenya-Rwanda is their main language, but French was the language of instruction, the language of the national exam and everything. And about 4.5 years ago, like a light switch, the government, President Kagame, said it will now be English. And so you can imagine that there's and I think ultimately that's going to be great for Rwanda, because I think they did it for the reasons, they're part of the East African community, which is all English, and for business and all these things, it makes a lot of sense. But definite growing pains, as we were looking for teachers who maybe know their subject matter, but they are not proficient at all in English. So since we're teaching in English, the national exam is in English, that didn't work very well. So we searched really hard to try and find Rwandan teachers, and it's getting better each year. But we have a combination of Ugandan and Rwandan right now, because Uganda is Anglophone, and so we find a number, probably half and half this year, of our teachers. So I think from there, actually, let's start the film. This is a film that was done about 2 years ago, so it's a tiny bit out of date just in terms of the numbers. We're full in the school now and when it was done, but it'll give you a sense of the school.
You can ask every girl in this school what you want to become. They all say either doctors, astronauts, engineers, and presidents. Divided by these then times?
I was at home and my mom told me that I was allowed to come, and I was so happy because I was dreaming of being a doctor.
It's a family, so we just talk to a teacher as if you're talking to your uncle, or you just talk to the headmaster as if you're talking to your dad. It's really more free here than any other place.
In Rwanda, the women are very strong. What they lacked in the past is the opportunity to use their brain.
Raise your hand if maybe you're thinking politics and you might maybe want to be president one day. Anyone? To be an architect. Nice. Let's see, you've got a few back there. Oh, nice.
Are you sure?
Yeah, she might have just decided right now. I think partly because of where we were at with our own children and they're growing and in school and all that, we just started to really have conversations about how lucky our own kids are with the opportunities that they have, and that should be something that's not a privilege, that should be something that's a right for everyone. We'd had a number of people say to us to not think of sub-Saharan Africa only as a place of, you know, all these hardship and difficulty, but also as this incredible place of opportunity. And we really decided that this school needed to become a school of excellence where these girls have the opportunity for the, you know, highest caliber of education.
Currently, there are 180 girls at this school, 90 girls per grade. So when we're fall next year, it'll be 270.
All right, so we need to get you going on your project, okay? So
we are seeking the best and brightest, absolutely the case. Our mission is to make it possible for the young women of Rwanda to pursue careers in science and technology, which is very much a primary focus of the national agenda.
1 mole of a gas at standard temperature and pressure.
It's very important to teach Rwandan girls because traditionally in Rwanda, the culture didn't favor women. Like I had two sisters who never went to school. One of her sisters, she ended up contracting HIV and AIDS and she died. I blame it on lack of education.
When the girls leave here, they will go home to circumstances where maybe they get 1 meal a day, and here they're getting 3 squares. When they return from holiday, I'll say, what did you miss most? And I was kind of hoping they would say, oh, we missed you, Mr. Peter, the most. But in fact, what they say is, we missed the food.
You have the biggest bang for your buck when you educate a girl. She goes on to make sure all of her children are educated. She has less chance of getting HIV/AIDS. Her children are more likely to live to age 5 because she's getting maternal health care and then health care for her children, all kinds of things that if she didn't have that education, she wouldn't know.
They are encouraging girls to catch up with boys so that we can become good future leaders and we can rule the world.
In this school, most of them are nerds, or they are very intelligent, they are very smart students.
My favorite subject is chemistry.
I really like math.
I really love biology.
-160.
The passion and the ambition and the perseverance and the work ethic among these young women, by far the most extraordinary that I've experienced. I have girls that are in study hall at 6 a.m. and they're there on a regular basis.
We do work hard in order to achieve our dreams.
We are powerful. We can do everything.
Yesterday, we had the incredible opportunity to make a phone call to a young woman named Josine, who lives in Gisenyi on the border of Congo, and called her out of the blue to say, we have received your extraordinary national examination results, and we want to offer you a place at the school.
Njye numvise bwa mbere nyine wampamagara numvise nyine atari byo nyine numva nyine atari byo byandenze gusa sinzi uko ntago mwayibona sinza ko nge byandenze nishimye cyane niga mu myaka ishize nigaga cyane nyine narapanze nyine plan y'ukuntu nyine y'ubuzima bwanjye nyine impamvu nifuza kuziga medecine nanga kuba nabona umumama ubyara nyine agapfa cyangwa se umwana wabyaye agapfa numva bimbangamiye nge nk'uruhare rwanjye nazajya mbafasha ku buryo nyine izo mama nge ni umwarimu ako nubwo yize ni nkaho tubaho nk'abandi bose kuko amafaranga abona biba bisaba kuyatugabanya twebwe abana twese twiga kandi ni na make cyane ntabwo yadukwira nyine izi chance mbonye zo kujya igashora kwigayo bizagabanyiriza dépense mu rugo bityo ashoye no kwita ku bandi bana.
Ngenda guruko nagiye mbwira bari abagore bose dukorana uko byagenze basi ubundi baducikeho ngiye niko mbiwe.
Kuko
ubu ni ishema riga ryacu yewe kuzasanga yenda abana bo mu miryango ikomeye bafite ibintu bihenze ni wenda inkweto amasogisi ikintu cyanteye ubwoba iniforume y'ibihumbi senkanyuze uraba yenda bambara n'amakaravati
petetre kuko ari ikigo cyiza
amakoti n'igihe mwafata umukati n'icyayi
nzawugira n'inzada
ko mana yewe uzana ukuri pe yewe amatama ari amatama
rego ko
bano bana bari yewe.
For a girl coming from a small village in rural Rwanda to come here is really like traveling not only to another country, it's almost like to another galaxy. The quality of the facility here is just remarkable.
This is my bed, and then this is my deca Lydia. Hey guys! Oh, these are my friends. This is Elvani, Andrew, Esther.
The days here are really amazing. The first thing I do when I wake up is smiling.
On weekends, we play games like volleyball, football, frisbee. We do some yoga.
I like playing basketball, and thinking about it, it makes my day really brilliant.
It's a must to do it. A healthy body with a healthy mind.
This art.
Yeah.
Then and then. This is ten and this is art.
I think they named me Good Luck because I born in 1994 on the 3rd April. After like 4 days, the genocide started.
I think if people were educated, they wouldn't have agreed to do such a shameful thing. They would have made their own decisions, see that people are the same, they are equal.
The quality of education at this school sure can contribute to prevent other disastrous events happening in this country.
I think it's absolutely true that when you have a more educated population, you're going to decrease the chance of having that sort of conflict again. There's a sadness when you know the history, but you feel this inspiring sense of hope with the way people are attempting to move forward.
Education today will help us make our own decisions so we can help the world with our minds open.
They used to think women are there to do domestic stuff at home, but right now women in Rwanda are realizing their talents.
We are strong in our hearts, we are strong in our faith, believing that we can achieve everything.
My hopes and dreams for these girls is to see them taking part in the development of this country.
These young women will go on to be the top doctors and teachers and lawyers and ministers and senators in the country. For us, it's exciting to think that maybe we could play some very small part in helping to support that.
Nubwo igashora nyine hari abakobwa nyine bazi ubwenge benshi, njye ndumva ari uwa mbere ahubwo nta nubwo ari uwa kabiri.
So hopefully that gives you, I mean, I always feel like I can stand up here and talk for, 2 hours and still not really give the feeling of it that in 10 minutes can give of these extraordinary young women, and why, with every day, every month, every year that's gone by, I've become more and more passionate about trying to help them fulfill their dreams and what will be possible if they get that chance. They really are amazing. I'm so glad you got to hear from both Yvonne and Jocelyn. Jocelyn was the one in the film that says she wants to rule the world, which she totally will, and it's just amazing. So, and good luck Joyce, I should mention too, that was, she didn't say in the film, but she somehow managed to survive. She's an orphan. Her parents, her whole family was killed. She was only 4 days old, as she said, when the genocide started. Her entire family was killed. But somehow, some way, and we don't really know how, she survived. So somebody obviously scooped up this brand new baby somewhere and saved her. And she's just a remarkable young woman as well. So like I said, hopefully you get a sense of why I feel so passionate about it. This gives you an idea of our model when we look at how we want to transition over. And we do have some government support. The government mostly just does some skin in the game, to be honest. It's not a lot of money in the whole scheme of things, but they pay for, they've done some background support, and then they pay for our African teachers at the same level that they would pay at a government school. So we pay our teachers more than that and pay the difference for those African teachers, but we feel like it's an important sign of commitment to the school. And then we do rely for most of it, everything on donations from individuals and grants from foundations, corporations, things like that. And then there is, as part of our model, there's a small percentage of the population in Rwanda that can afford to pay tuition. And so about 20% of the girls at our school do pay tuition, which does a couple things. First of all, it helps us to get closer to becoming maybe not totally sustainable, but more independent. But it also has created this really wonderful blend of students at the school where you have geographic and economic diversity with all these girls together that come from very different backgrounds. And they're like a family. I mean, they support each other like you can't believe. One of the things that people told us to start out that was very important, very wise people, much smarter than us that have done work like this, said, if your goal is to turn this school over and to have it be a Rwandan school and the community to feel a sense of ownership, you have to engage them from the very beginning. And so the first thing we did was build a community center on the property, and that really serves as a bridge between the community and the school, and we use it for basketball and our all sorts of school events, and then the community uses it as well for all kinds of meetings that they have. We've done English classes in there, agriculture classes, all kinds of things. So it's been a really wonderful meeting place for them to feel a part of it as well. So this gives you kind of an overview of the land. We have about 26 acres of land, and about half of it, kind of left as you're looking at it, is all the school buildings, the community center at the top, number 1, and then classroom buildings, number 3, of course, the soccer field, and then the dorms and everything. And then the other half is all the ag land that I mentioned earlier that we, when we realized we had this land and we're trying to figure out how do we break down and cut into our this huge operating budget of a boarding school where you're feeding nearly 300 people every day, we went to Wazoo and said, okay, what can you do? Can you help us? We've never done this. I frankly cannot keep a houseplant alive, so I have no business doing anything related to the agriculture, but it's been really fun to learn about, and they've partnered with us now for the last, I guess, 4 years now, and where the land was just literally weeds and bush and everything, they've now created, it's a fully functioning farm with irrigation, and we have every kind of fruit tree, papaya, mango, we have orange trees, which are unusual there, and avocados, all kinds of vegetables. And so most of that is used then in the kitchen for healthy, nutritious food for the students. But then also as part of the plan as we develop, we're hoping that we can sell the excess for revenue for the school in Kigali. We're about an hour outside of Kigali from the capital. So to take it in and sell to restaurants or things like that will be great. This just gives you an idea of the farm. So as we look, one of the things that we've been trying to look at from the beginning are, how will we know we're successful? What are we trying to do? How will we know? And obviously the biggest focus is the students. and how do they perform, how do they, do they finish school, do they graduate, can they pass the national exam? But because we're so focused on educating the whole girl and not just the test scores, we're also looking for things like how does she show signs of leadership, what's sort of those moral compass types of things that we've got going on at the school that can help them really be leaders and not just have the knowledge. And then with the teachers, of course, we do a lot of teacher training and things, team teaching with some of our teachers from the US and teachers there, so they're really learning from each other, which is great. And trying to keep teachers there, not, I guess, totally unlike here, but probably worse there. It's not highly regarded to be a teacher, so professionalizing it so that they feel proud to be a teacher and what they're a part of. And then, of course, looking at how we're impacting the greater community through bringing people in from the local farmers to learn about some of the ag things that we're doing and how they might be able to use those on their own half a hectare or whatever, as they're all subsistence farmers for the most part. So these are just some fun things for the last year, for 2013. So as I said, we opened in 2011, so we just finished our third academic year. They're on a calendar year. They go January to mid-October. So we had our very first graduation in October, had our end of our third year. And we've had some wonderful success already that, I mean, truly, these girls have performed and done things way beyond our wildest imagination. There's a school in South Africa, African Leadership Academy, I don't know if anyone's familiar with here, but a really amazing place where they seek out, it's a 2-year university prep school where they seek out the top African students on the entire continent, 50 young women, 50 young men, to come to this. And it was started by 2 Stanford MBA grads, and they came to our school and were really impressed, and we now, for the past 2 years in a row, they've picked 3 of our students to be, so of the 50 women, which we were just blown away by, because we thought maybe they'd take 1. I mean, here we are, this teeny tiny school in Rwanda, given the whole continent. So we now have 6 of our students, which of course is always a little bit sad to lose some of your great students, but I mean, incredible opportunity for them, so amazing. We had a couple students go to Yale's summer program last year. One student got a Clinton Global Initiative scholarship to go to the United World College. If you guys are familiar, they have about 9 campuses, I think, around the world. And she got into one in Singapore. And that Clinton Initiative is paying for her to go there, and she would never be able to afford to go. And also, they've agreed to pay her scholarship all the way through medical school. She wants to be a doctor, which is incredible. Our debate team won the national championship. It's not on here, but if I don't say it, they'll be so mad. The basketball team won the district championship. And one of the things that we're probably most proud of has been the things that have organically come from the girls. So they have clubs, they go to school, they obviously study a lot, lots of study hall, but after school they do clubs and sports. And so you saw some of the sports, but some of the clubs that they do are things that they're interested in. So they've had journalism club, leadership clubs, French, different language clubs that they've come up with. And one of them that they started the very first year was the community service club. And I have to tell you, to hear these girls, many of them that come from very disadvantaged backgrounds, have the understanding of how lucky they are given this opportunity and how they want to give back. So they go into the local village where our school is and volunteer at some of the widows in the community. They work with the widows and teach English to some of the local workers, and they tutor the students at the local primary school. And then they did a big shoe drive with Tom's shoes that I'm sure you guys have heard of Tom's, that they gave away 1,000 pairs of shoes. So we're just so proud that, that was completely them from their hearts, which is, hugely gratifying. So we had our first graduation last October 4th. 85 girls graduated. President Kagame was our keynote speaker, which was incredible. You can imagine how excited the girls, they really look up to the president and what he's done to stabilize the country and all the infrastructure that's come and a lot of good things. So that was a really big deal. Actually, this is really, it's cool and funny at the same time, but we found out after we left after the graduation that they actually replayed the graduation in its entirety on Rwandan television. There's one channel, 2 times in the next week. So 2 hours of our graduation, 2 times in the next week, which we were like, wow, that is some slow news days. But they were so, I think they were really proud, and I think they felt like it was inspiring to other girls in the country.
trying to help them to stay motivated as well. So it was great. And the graduates, as she talked about in the video, but they want to go on. About a third of them want to be doctors. Maybe another third or so want to be engineers. A number of them architects, pilots, and they will go on to do it. I mean, they're that committed. So right now, as you might imagine, we've now got those graduates. Because they graduated in October, they're applying for fall of 2014 for school. So we imagine probably about half of the girls, about 40 of the graduates probably will end up at the National University in Rwanda, which is incredible. Less than 1% of the population goes on to university, so that's huge, and they should be very proud. And then we had 14 girls apply early decision to US schools in the fall, and 10 of them got in to the schools you can see there, Bucknell, Lafayette. Actually, again, Jocelyn, who wants to rule the world, she's the one that got into Lafayette, full scholarship. UPenn, Yale, I mean, it's just amazing what they're accomplishing. We had one student that applied to the Rwandan Air Force. We didn't even know she was applying, who wants to be a pilot. And she apparently performed so well on whatever their testing was that the general, or whoever it is for the Air Force, called her parents and her personally and said, we haven't had somebody score this high on these tests, girl or boy, in years, and I just want to congratulate you, and she's already off learning to fly. And now we're waiting for other school notifications, other places in East Africa, Central Africa, South Africa. As you can see, we're turning over because, again, you might imagine all these girls need full aid, financial aid. So trying to find where are those opportunities that they can find that. So I will put in one plug. If anybody knows any universities that you have connections with, that you'd be willing to connect us with, or down the road, maybe write a letter to, or even in a community. We're trying to, for these girls that are going to those schools, you can imagine it's going to be an enormous adjustment to come from Rwanda and end up at UPenn or wherever you are. And so we've been trying to reach out and find people in those communities that know somebody. We have somebody that has a brother that lives close by Lafayette, for example, that said, oh yes, I will absolutely have her come for Sunday dinner and have her kind of surrogate part of the family while she's living here. So anybody that has those kinds of connections, please feel free to contact me. We'd love it as we continue to see where they're all going. So I just want to thank you again for having me here. And I think the final thing I would just say in this whole crazy deal is that, when we started this, and as you might imagine, I mean, it can be super paralyzing, all the things that go on in the world, and where do you try to do anything at all, to where do you even start? And so we were looking and researching and trying, and I finally had somebody, a friend who is very wise, and who said, there's a lot of people that stand on the banks of the river and they criticize what people are doing in the river because they're not doing it right or whatever, and they are standing there on the side of the banks just criticizing. But at a certain point, you can research and you should do that and you should be prepared, but at a certain point, you have to jump in the river and you have to try. And you're going to make mistakes, and we certainly have made mistakes, plenty of them, and we've had times that we've been in tears thinking, this is too hard, we can't do this, what are we doing? But we jumped in the river, and I don't regret it for a moment. It's been the most meaningful thing I've ever worked on, and so I'm really proud to be a part of it. And I would just say, whatever that is, that's your passion. It doesn't have to be girls in Rwanda. Whatever it is, though, don't be afraid to jump in the river, because good things will happen. So thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
I think we have time for just a couple questions. So what surprised you about the last couple of years? I mean, was anything different than what you expected it would be?
I think that the level that the girls have achieved has been, we hoped that they would do well, and we felt like we were building something special. And I give a huge amount of credit to Peter Thorpe, our head of school on the ground, because I feel like we had a great idea, and the vision is great, but he really on the ground, he's lived there for 4 years now from the beginning, and what he's done to build the school culture and really encourage these girls to trust their voice and go out there and try has really been remarkable. And so I think for that, Shell and I, we really do look at each other and say, oh my gosh, I mean, I just never would have expected where we are today so quickly. And what the girls are achieving, I think, is probably the most surprising. And the fact that, I think the other thing we comment on always is that, in a great way, I guess, but it always feels like the finish line gets moved, you know? We thought when the school opened and we finished, we would high five and go, woohoo, yeah, right, you know? We built a school. And then you go, oh, okay, now there's all these students in a school, and now, you know, we're not done yet, apparently. And then, you know, you keep
college,
going.
and then you take care of them when they're in college.
Yeah, and now I'm like, does anybody know anybody in Pennsylvania? And so, yeah, I mean, you feel like you just are, and again, in a great way, because it's so gratifying, but that's also surprising.
So the most common question that came in to me via text was, how much time did you spend in Rwanda? How many trips have you made? Just how much effort was all
Yeah,
this?
it's been a lot of time. I'd go about 3 times a year to Rwanda in general. There's been a couple of years earlier on that I went maybe 4 times. And so I guess over the course of the years, I leave tomorrow actually for Rwanda to go back over. We try and go about once per term, so 3 terms of the year. I think tomorrow, I think this might be my 23rd or 24th trip, maybe now. My kids have all gone about 5 times over the course of the time with me, which is amazing. And anybody, that's the other thing I should say and plug, is anybody wants to go to Rwanda, let me know. I'll give you all the scoop of where to go. But yeah, and time-wise, again, like all things, I mean, I never anticipated when we started this, I didn't anticipate that it would be a full-time job. And I have 3 kids. My partner in this has 4 kids. So when we go, we have to be super stealth in our going in, and it always feels like we're not there long enough, but we're always gone from home too long that, you know, my kids are mad at me for a couple of days when I get home. So it's been a lot of time, you know, here, certainly working on it, a lot of fundraising, a lot of things like that, and then trips over there.
The one thing that stood out to me when I met some of the graduates at this event was how anxious they all are to go back to Rwanda and give back to the community.
Yeah.
I mean, I expected that, you know, oh wow, I get to go to an American university and, you know, start a new life in America, and that was not what they're up to at all.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I forgot to say that. I think it's actually kind of breathtaking to me to hear them talk about what they want to do. So, for example, Yvonne, who was one of our speakers at this event, she will tell you, and to a girl really, I mean, this is an example, but this is how she wants to be a pediatric oncologist, because there's no oncologist in Rwanda. And so she knew a kid when she was younger that died of cancer, and she recognizes that, you know, it's a death sentence. If you even are diagnosed, maybe, you probably don't have the wherewithal or the money to go out to be treated in Kenya or somewhere else. And so she is absolutely determined to be the first pediatric oncologist in Rwanda. And again, I'm sure she will be. But they're all very focused on what they want to do to come back for Rwanda, you know, to come and be a part of this story and the success. And, you know, truthfully, I think it will be interesting 20 years from now if you still have that. I mean, right now, it's almost like feels like a startup, right? Where you have, everybody has this feeling of all hands on deck, and what can I do to be a part of the story, right? And part of the success. And so they're so excited to go and get the best that they can get and then come back and make a difference. And I hope that that maintains that sort of patriotic sense of that as they develop and it goes on.
Are there any questions that people didn't text me yet? Lloyd?
Are you going to open up other?
The question is, are they going to open other schools?
No, it's a good question. I think for now, we're so focused on, I mean, we've gone more deep dive with this and funding this and making sure that it works. And does the model work in every way, like what we're doing to educate the girls, to creating sort of an independent, semi-self-sustaining model. And I don't think we're there yet, so I feel like we still have a ways to go to know what we would do or tweak to do another school. But definitely the intention has always been, whether it's us or someone else, we've tried really hard to keep track and share our story and tell, because there's other people out there. I mean, we get contacted all the time, people that want to do something, you know, either in a different country or whatever, so that we can share what we learned and what worked or didn't, where we went wrong, that we, you know, say maybe you don't want to do that part. And so, I mean, that's my hope and goal, is that it will, whether it's us or inspires someone else to take pieces of the model and replicate it that way, would be the ideal to me. So you could branch out even more.
Yeah.
What do you do to bring your family and your own community into this so that they don't feel like you're putting yourself out to somebody else more than them?
Yeah. Well, with my family, I mean, I've tried to, so my 2 older kids are teenagers, so if anybody has teenagers here, you know, you go gentle with the things that you propose to them. But, you know, I've mostly tried to have it be something that I'm doing and to encourage them to know about. And again, they've come with me a number of times, so they feel very comfortable in Rwanda. As a matter of fact, this summer, all 3 of them will come with me and we'll spend about a month there. So they feel very comfortable, but I think it has to be, I think if it's rammed down their throat, then it won't resonate with them at all. And this may not be their thing. Like I was saying, it might be something entirely different that they get excited about, and that would be great. So I've tried to, just as much as I can, expose them to all kinds of things, and to also show them, hopefully through this, how lucky they are. You know, to have a sense of, and it's all relative. I know, you know, I have great, wonderful kids, but I've often said, we had a student early on, when we first started the school, a girl named Solange, really amazing young girl, who we didn't realize when she came to us, she had a pretty serious health problem. She had osteomyelitis in her leg, and they were saying in Rwanda she would have to have her leg amputated. So, I mean, literally the school had, I think, been open a month. And so we thought, oh my gosh, she's 17 years old, you know, and there's gotta be a second opinion or something before they amputate her leg. So we managed to get her here, to get care here, pro bono, which was amazing. And so she lived with us for about 3 months. And I think that experience for my kids, just having her with us and understanding, she would be up in the morning before I would go to wake her up at like 6 to go to the doctors with her physics book. I'm not kidding you. Like in there reading, because she was so worried that maybe she was going to fall behind. And I've said, which I'm sure my son will hate that I'm saying, but if I walked into my 17-year-old son's room and he was just like perusing his physics book just in the morning before school, I would literally probably pass out. And he's such a great kid, but you know, it's all relative, but having them have that sense of like what we all take for granted and what a gift it is. And when you see that, sometimes seeing those things through someone else's eyes can make you realize it, you know, differently.
Well, it's an amazing story, and it's exciting to think if you fast forward this 20 years, there'll be thousands of graduates, and the impact that they can have on a country like Rwanda. It's amazing. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you.